It is another episode of Sell Me This Pro, and as I was about to hit record, we realized that we actually do not have a plan for this episode. We forgot who the pro is. We forgot what we would. What are we gonna do, Bdog?
I mean, there's Pro League. We could talk about Pro League. There's like a ton of teams that are there, 32 if I'm not mistaken. So we can go through those.
There we go. Let's do the pros from Pro League, the ones that we're keeping our eyes on. Also, while we're here, can we just do like a little bit of a brag, a self brag, tap ourselves on the shoulders? I'm saying tap ourselves. It's mainly Bdog. You called it. You called it with one of these players, and boy, did that team come out swinging. Made a big statement at the start of Pro League, beating FaZe. You got to be proud, Bdog. You said we needed to keep an eye on them.
Yeah, and then they kind of got dismantled by Eternal Fire. So
we're just focusing on FaZe.
Let them get to playoffs first. But yeah, no, they were really good against FaZe. Like, great game plan. I just think it was probably the perfect time for them to play them because it's FaZe that has not been the same FaZe for quite a while, and then you've got a hungry tier 2 team that wants to prove themselves on LAN. So great opening game. It looks scary, but they were clearly ready for it.
Here we are talking about Sangel and Alenzi. I just realized we didn't even do a proper introduction there. There is another episode about that, so you can watch that. Yeah, we are fantastic content creators. I am constantly surprised that more people don't watch our stuff. So there's like a drastic change here because I look like I just ran 500 meters because I did. There was a whole edit where we had to cut stuff up because people were phoning me to deliver a package, and then I had to run, and now I'm out of breath. Okay, Bdog, this episode has started off very well. We're going to be talking about the players that we've kept an eye on in Pro League, specifically coming from Tier 2. And the first one that I kind of want to focus in on, because I do think this is a team that has incredible scouting. And I say that only because they found Melbs and then sold them to G2. So that's about as much as my research involves on this when I talk about their scouting. But it is, of course, M80. And the Melbs replacement, Lake. What do we think about him?
I like him. I think he's not gonna be Miles. Like, let's just get that out the way. Late coming in, I think, is a good sort of step in the right direction for M80 because they've gone international, they've done that, and now they are still looking internally. And it's good that they're just focusing on their region rather than looking for more imports. Lake is a guy that was coming in from ESEA Advanced, didn't have that much experience at all, just sort of at this level. But his raw mechanics are absolutely brilliant. And he's an entry fragger that will just run at people. And this goes very well in the NACS scene. Moving on to the sort of wider scale into like international events, it will probably take him a while to sort of find his footing. It'll be good to see if he can maintain his same level of aggression he brings domestically over internationally. But I think when M80 played Vitality a couple of months ago, he did really well on Vertigo, I remember. So I think this kid's got a lot of potential if he's able to kind of cultivate it in the right way. He's just your classic, I will hold W and just kind of open up bomb sites. But whenever I've seen him, which has been now just a couple of times I've casted him, he's been really brilliant at just kind of being aware of when the right timing is to sort of go and then taking space. The entry pathing is what's really impressed me. It's not just sort of holding W with no purpose. It's getting the kill. Okay, well then when do I go from here? How do I get the next point of contact? How do I take the most amount of space on the site for the rest of my teammates to flood in? And I think he's been very good at that.
Because we're sort of focusing on North America, I do think it's a nice time. And there was, we did an episode of Feed the Trolls where we kind of just ganged in on complexity a couple of weeks ago. Launders joined us. And one of the things we spoke about and I wanted to speak about was the downfall of North American Counter-Strike and sort of what we had seen with the rise of Valorant and then obviously COVID and how that region had suffered. And Launders brought out a thing about scouting and how, you know, if Malbs was hanging around there and that there was this fresh new talent in North America. Do you see that with some of the players coming up? There is this talent that's available and that can be seen. Is Pro League going to be a place where maybe we get to see some of that talent?
It's tougher in North America because I think you've got a not as deep as of a pool as you would kind of hope for because of Valorant, because of North American Counter-Strike. You expected maybe a generation to rise up, especially after Cloud9 won the Boston Major, but we've got examples of it, but we haven't really got like the next standout guy. But what we have got is young players that are in these teams. I think for Wildcard, they've gone down the same route as M80, where they've kind of got these international players coming in Fuzi and Susp, and they're also sort of using the veteran of Stanislaw to kind of cultivate these younger pros. I think JBa is a really good example of that. I'd compare him to Lake, but I think JBa's got more international experience. I think JBa is a really good prospect to kind of go forward in the future and maybe even join, say, like a Complexity. I would throw Liquid in the mix, but obviously they've gone EU. So I could see JBa maybe potentially in a couple of years, maybe making the move there to Complexity. But in terms of North America, the only two at the moment I would really say would have to be JBa and also like Lake, just from like they're the guys I want to keep my eye out on. I think Swisher was really good and is now sort of he's getting his form back, but he's not where he was maybe like a year and a half ago, where we were like, oh, Swisher's really good, because he is really good, but he's not sort of pushed on from that. He sort of maintained his level, if not got a little bit worse.
Obviously, we'll have a chance to see JBa a little bit more here during Pro League. So I am curious what it is about him that you like, what you've seen that you think people should pay attention to.
I think JBa has just got sort of how do I phrase this without using the same adjectives every time we talk about a pro? He's got, I feel like he's gained a lot more experience now, which makes him a lot more comfortable. And you can see that he has got just an ability to be able to read the game quite well, especially in mid to late round situations. You can tell that Stanislaw will trust him with that. And it's actually interesting just seeing the European just sort of imports really affect this team, because whilst they've sort of upticked, they qualified through to the RMR pretty convincingly. I think that was 3-0, if I'm not mistaken. It's cool that you still got JBa that is performing really well. In fact, everyone on this team is performing really well. And I think what you're going to see, especially with JBa, is because you've now raised the floor of this wildcard project, it will give him more opportunities to go out and do things, maybe a little bit more explosive, maybe a little bit more that he was comfortable in doing, and will now have the trust of his teammates to be able to do that. Because say he does make those mistakes, you've got Sonic, you've got Susp, you've got even Stan that can come in and maybe like rectify it. You're not immediately sort of losing a lot of momentum or potentially the round because of maybe a mistake he's made. And I think it's actually really important in these Pro League games to make these mistakes, to actually go and do this, so you learn, because you learn by making the mistakes in the first place. You learn by, maybe I shouldn't have peeked this angle at that time. Maybe I should have taken a wider stance rather than being too close to the angle. Maybe this wasn't the right time to actually call for this flashbang, etc., etc. Like, I don't know. You learn by doing. You're learning by playing the best teams in the world at Pro League. I think it speaks volumes that Donk had to drop the CS2 kill record and then have to drop another 37 kill performance to get wildcard away. That was a really close game of CS, and it was really cool to kind of watch that one. It was obviously cool to see Donk doing Donk things, and that's going to be just sort of the main takeaway there. But it was sort of everyone having a good game, bar JBa, but that's one game in the whole event.
So this Pro League for the likes of Wildcard and M80, I think that they have ESL Challenger Atlanta after this, and then obviously they've both qualified for the RMR. So this really is their opportunity as well to get a feel for the level of competition they're going to be facing on their major run. Do you think that that's kind of how they're going to play something like Pro League, and in the sense of getting experience for the likes of Lake or one of their younger players, and kind of hopefully figuring out what their style is going to be? Is that what you think Pro League really becomes for a lot of these, like, I want to say lesser known teams, but I don't think that's really fair. I suppose tier 2 teams, if you like.
I think where you've got so many opportunities in Pro League, and it is a more relaxed format, like the whole event is based on just dicking about. But like in terms of like the content being made, like the casting of it, especially in like the first early weeks of it, but like where you've got like an upper bracket, a mid bracket, a lower bracket, you've got so many chances to kind of have these extended games. And for the likes of M80 and Wildcard, that's invaluable against European experience, especially when you've got that RMR on the way, especially when you've got just sort of, again, as you said, ESL Challenger Atlanta coming up. Like, these are all really good steps in sort of making you feel more prepared for the format, for the likes of Lake, for the likes of JBa. Like it's really important that they are still having these sort of LAN experiences to kind of get used to, okay, I'm flying to a different country. For the guys in America as well, I mean, they're always doing that, but you're now going to travel even further when you go into Shanghai, right? So like there's a lot to be said about the value of just LAN experience. I think JBa has already played an RMR, so that would go well in sort of his favor. I don't know if Sustam Fuzi had actually. I should have maybe looked that up. But Stan obviously has, Sonic has. Like you're gonna have that confidence. Now with JBa already playing one, he'll feel a lot better about it. M80, they've been there before, so Lake will probably just feel confident with the fact that they are having all these reps. And yeah, it's more about, it's not so much finding out your game plan in terms of your overall structure, but it's maybe testing these little nuances, like the variations just sort of in your mid round, your timing that you want to go for when you execute onto a site, for example. What kind of trigger points are making these EU teams go looking for information? What can we learn from these demos? What could we learn and what did we feel in the server? Like, I think a lot of this maybe goes overlooked as well, but resources in official capacity are so important. Think about when Carrigan uploads all his little team comms to YouTube, right? What does that say to you? Sure, it shows that FaZe have got really good communication, but the overarching thing that I think goes overlooked is all TeamSpeak comms are recorded, and that means you have access to them. So in official capacity, M80, Wildcard, for example, the NA teams, but also every team, can go back, have access to the recording, watch the demo and say, okay, this is what was happening at the time. What information did we have at the time? How can we improve the communication? Like, there's a lot to take away, a lot to break down from just even playing at LAN, and you're also playing against the best European teams in the world. So that was a roundabout way of saying, yes, it's incredibly valuable, but here's also the resources you've got access to.
So I just want to preface this if you're watching, because we obviously record this a couple of days ahead of when you see it. So some of these teams and some of the players we're mentioning, you'll probably see them play, and you probably would have seen them play by the time we're doing this particular video and it comes out. So we're not going to talk necessarily about results. We can only talk about what we've seen so far. And some of them might shit the bed. That's something that we've just accepted might happen before you watch this episode. So just be prepped for that. We kind of just want to showcase some of these new up and coming players. That's the whole point of the show. We've spoken a bit about North America. I want to move to, this is a secret. We haven't actually said this out loud, but I'm pretty sure it's Bdog's favorite region, South America. He fangirls about South American players all the time, which is weird because we've actually only done one episode ever of a South American player. But for the most part, he consistently sends me messages about South American players he wants to talk about. So now I'm going to give you that opportunity, Bdog. When it comes to Pro League, who from South America are we keeping our eyes on?
Venomzera from Red Canids. And
why?
It's because he has got a lot of potential. And he was playing, the thing is, he was playing really well before sort of the changes that were made for Red Canids. If you're unfamiliar with this Red Canids team, please get to know them, because they just about made it through the RMR, which is a little bit scary, but they're there. That's the most important thing. On this team, you've got Davideus, who, if you're a little bit unfamiliar, is just an incredible rifler, like absolutely insane. You've got Venomzera, who we'll talk about in a little bit, but he's got like a wealth of experience with playing with some of the best players in the region in South America. And that's for good reason. That's not a coincidence that he's consistently played with some really good sort of icons in the South American CS scene. Then you got Henny, who's just moved from Imperial, who's like this unbelievable AWPER that's incredibly aggressive. We still haven't seen the best out of Henny, but like major grand finalist. Like, can't take that away from him. coldzera, everyone knows about coldzera. His return to form in CS2 as well has been brilliant. Made the major with Legacy as well last month, last cycle. God, everything feels like a year, honestly, in CS terms. Like every season, it feels like it's been going on about like 2.5 years when you're in it. But yeah, coldzera, and like this team is just awesome. Like it's got so much firepower. You've also got Nathan, who is now moved off the AWP, and he's now just primarily just in-game leading the team. I don't know. On paper, this team cooks. Like this team is like so good. When they announced the Henny signing, I was like, right, I'm all in. Red Canids, one of the best teams in South America ever. Obviously, it hasn't quite come to pass in that way, but Venomzera, let's talk a little bit about him, because it's important to kind of get to know this guy. 20 years old, was signed from a team called Paqueta, and Paqueta were this Brazilian team that I think they were an organization in the end, but it felt like they weren't one. But anyway, they were running through like all these CCTs in South America. That's where I first caught sight of Venomzera. He was dropping like 25 kills every game. It was like really cool to see. He gets his opportunity, just kind of playing in Red Canids, playing with like all of these players that I've already spoken to you about. But before that, he came from Young Gods. So who came from Young Gods? Mr. Snow. So again, we've kind of drawing these full circle moments back to the content. But yeah, Venomzera, a really exciting player, because he's one of those that does his job, and it can be difficult when you're in a team with a large amount of personalities, especially in a team like Henny, who's going to want to aggressive AWP. Davideus, who is an incredibly aggressive rifler. You could even put Knifin in that same category as well. Knifin likes to get involved in the action a lot more. And you've got Cold, who is now playing a little bit more supportive, but still would want to play all the star positions. How do you fit in? How do you make your mark on the server? How is it that you're going to be one of the standout players? Can you even make a difference? Well, he is. He's got a 1.15 rating just across the last 3 months. And it's been really cool to see that he's been given the trust on some star role positions. Like they are putting a lot of faith in him. And he's delivering on it, which is really good to see.
So who else from South America? Because obviously now we've heard about Red Canids and what a fan you are of them. I'm going to be keeping an eye on them because I actually didn't know about this team until you just told me all of that. So I'm going to be focusing in pretty hard. But I'm curious because we have some other South American teams in the mix. Anyone else that you're a fan of?
We've got to talk about 9Z, really, don't we? I think 9Z put everyone just on notice when they started performing incredibly well. Didn't do so great at Cologne, but look, they won the Free Fire League. We saw the Dallas run that they went on as well, where they got the semi-finals. Like this team has been performing, I think, well above sort of where they should be. I don't know if that's harsh or not, but I look at 9Z, they're 17th in the world. I'm like, are you? And then they keep going to these LAN events. They're really good on LAN. It's actually different. Online, is kind of hit and miss, but on LAN they're a completely different beast, which I think is really cool. It's also just cool that 9Z are this team that have kind of got underappreciated like regional players. Like you've got Max and DGT who are Uruguayan, but for goodness sake. And Chile, spoke about Davideus, got to talk about HUASOPEEK. And HUASOPEEK has come out of nowhere. I think HUASOPEEK is like cowboy in Spanish, or Spanish, I think. Don't fact check me, but it doesn't matter. And yeah, he obviously exploded and was just sort of performing incredibly well. I'll be real with you, I didn't even know of HUASOPEEK until he joined 9Z. And then I went back and I took a look at it, and he played for the academy team. Then he had a short stint on this team called Flamenco. And then he just gets picked up back to 9Z. I'm like, how? Like, how is this guy just hit the ground running, seemingly come out of nowhere, and is just farming? Like, he's just playing so well. So, yeah, everyone has kind of done HUASOPEEK to death a little bit. I feel like there's, like, so many analyst segments on HUASOPEEK. I don't think it's relevant to talk about him too much, but it's important to just bring him up and say, hey, of course, look, this where we're doing this show and we talk about all the pros that are really good and you might not have heard of. You probably have heard of HUASOPEEK, but still keep your eye out for him.
You said there about 9Z about they didn't have a great Cologne run, but I think what's interesting for me about this team is they did in the play-ins, which was obviously that stage 1. I thought that they looked very freaking scary. Like they looked super convincing. They had some big moments. They kind of, to me, ran out of steam when they got to the group stages. Maybe that's like a little bit of a youthful thing as well. I think like a lot of LAN time can make all of the difference. The more time you're playing on LAN with these European teams, like in a setting like Pro League, can help you out a bit. But I felt like there were moments of impressive play from this group. And if they can harness that more against some of the bigger opposition, I think that they could be one of those upset kings, right? That come in and kind of a little bit like the Mongols used to be, where you never quite knew what you were going to get, and they could potentially change an entire bracket with one game.
I think it's also maybe the more direct comparison would obviously be Furia of old when they first exploded onto the European scene and were just playing this incredibly aggressive style of CS. I think 9Z do sort of play some of the most aggressive CS we've seen recently out of South America. And they've got players that can get away and do that, like HUASOPEEK, like Martinez, who obviously came from Obvistar Riders. He went on that Cologne run with them and has now done that Dallas run with 9Z. I agree with you. I think they ran out of steam. Also, they had that Cologne group stage was stacked. Like, they had to go into the first game and play Astralis, and then they had to go and play Pain, and then Pain ended up being like just one best of 3 off from making the playoffs. So it's a tough run to go up against. I think it's like kind of like BS, but like not deliberately, that every time we get a European event, the South American teams just end up playing against each other all the time. But so like they're just having these they're just having these rematches, and it's like, oh, this has got to suck so much for them, because whilst it's a really cool experience, like you've traveled away from your country and now you're playing against like familiar faces, like you want to have like domestic rivals. It happens every time. And I guess it's the nature of the bracket, right? When it's like, okay, you got a European opposition going up against them. It's close, but they lose. Oh no, we're all in the lower bracket together. Like that's kind of just what happens, and that's why like that's the case. But it'd be so much more beneficial if they were able to sort of play like more European teams. But I guess win your games, win your games, and you will. But yeah, it's a shame. So yeah, they had Astralis, they had Pain. Pain was when Pain was just spiking. In at that point, that's something that we said as well. Humble brag. But they went on, they did really well, and then since then, like BetBoom Dasher came around, Pain were performing really well. Like Pain, for me, the best team in that region right now. And then closely followed by 9Z. I don't think Furia enters that conversation right now for me.
It's a big one. That is a big statement to make, but I kind of like it. I also kind of agree with you. I actually sit on the same page here. Which will be interesting as the year progresses. That's always this for me is the fun part, because this Pro League, and we said this earlier with with North America, is this is the start of major prep, right? This is the start of teams trying to get to a point where they can peak for the major and for the RMRs, for those of them that have qualified for the RMR. So it starts to get really exciting now to see how they perform. So it'll obviously, it's a good place to test new things, and I think a lot of teams use it as a testing ground and a bit of a space to see where you stand against that international opposition, so that you can get the work done before the end of the year. And I'm interested to see how the South Americans do, because I really like what I saw from 9Z. I love what I'm seeing from Pain, but they're not part of the conversation today.
No,
we'll keep bringing them up.
I think
so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, one more thing on this, and people will be saying, well, what's valuable? I guess like more casual viewers who stumbled across this podcast. Hello, I imagine there's a lot of diehard CS fans here, but for European, why is it so important to play European teams? It's just because they're better, guys. Like that's the reality. Like the structure is just brilliant. Like the micro and the macro is at such a high level. Like you will notice how South America has gone from this, and this is a testament to the development of South America over the past couple of years. Think about all the LAN events recently that we've seen South American teams at. Think about the boot camps that they have where they go to Europe and they get to crack against a lot of teams. They model their playstyle off Europe, and it's the same for NA. It's like that's why Complexity have done well. That's why Liquid have maybe even gone international. It's because the structure and the style of European CS is just at a much higher quality, and it's evolved a lot more than the other regions. And you will now see that Pain are playing much more structured. MIBR are playing really structured CS. Like so are 9Z to a certain extent, especially in the mid rounds. But it's like you get all this data, you get all this information, you learn from playing against these teams, and that's the most important thing.
So, I mean, you brought up Europe. Pro League is in Europe. Let's talk about the European players that we're looking at. This player, I actually wanted to do an entire episode just on him, but we're not going to. He's just going to be featured here.
Oh, we can.
I'm legitimately going to say it now. I cannot see a world where Wrinkle stays, and we're going to be talking about Wrinkle on this NIP lineup. I think that he is very good. I think he should be somewhere else. I don't know how much he costs, but I imagine after the Shanghai Major in sort of sometime next year where everyone starts fiddling with the pieces of their various teams. I imagine Wrinkle is on the top of a lot of people's lists. I just think that he is very, very good. And I don't know, Bdog, if NIP is the right place for him, because I don't think he gets to shine all the time. Sometimes he does.
Sometimes he does. I think at the moment Wrinkle, yeah, I think his development's definitely sort of stagnating by being in NIP, because NIP as an organization has just been stagnating for quite a few years, which is a shame because it's such a legendary org, right? But they're trying to do too much over at NIP, and I really hope that they sort of like get their shit together, for lack of a better term, because you are hindering development and career. Like, I think about Rez, no one speaks about Rez anymore, and that's sad. Wrinkle, yeah, I think he's a little bit one-dimensional at the moment. I think he's incredibly aggressive. I think that if you know how to counter Wrinkle, you can, if you've got players that are better than him, and that's the key caveat. If you've got players that are better than him. And I will always think about that Blast article where he compared himself to Wonderful, and every time they play Wonderful, Wonderful has a pop-off game, Wrinkle does nothing.
I think it was MATYS at Blast Fall Groups who said, yeah, Wrinkle's great, but I'm paraphrasing, where he basically said, he's very good, but if you know how he plays, you can shut him down. And then he went in and just shut him right freaking down. And this is what worries me, because Wrinkle is very young, and I do think he's very good, but I worry about him being in a team where maybe he doesn't have the sort of big personalities to learn from. Like, a Wonderful sits in Navi and he has a lot of experience around him.
Exactly.
I mean, NIP's coach is very experienced. He's really good, and I think he's fantastic at developing new talent, but I don't know if the pieces around Wrinkle are enough to help him develop.
No, I agree with that completely. I'll just add on to this as well, that this is Wrinkle's first international team, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, this is your first team you go into an international project, and you're immediately playing a tier 1 tournaments. Like, it's been good to see him adjust to that. That's another just sort of check in the box you can add for Wrinkle, in terms of, I think that he can definitely go to other international teams. I think he can play well, but you're right. I think there needs to be more experience in the ranks to help develop him. And Exist is a brilliant coach as well, but also Exist wasn't an AWPER, so you can't even have those sort of like one-on-one, how do I develop from here, where do I go from here sort of things. Yeah, it's tough, because I do like Wrinkle as a player. I feel like he does get overhyped in certain instances, and it's just not quite there for me. It's just a little bit. It is a little bit like, I know what he's going to do every game when I watch him. And it's obviously quite clear that the pros know that, obviously with the MATYS example, also the Wonderful example. I think he can definitely be that player. And also, as we've mentioned, look, he's young, he's 19 years old, and we're already having these conversations about that he can definitely play in some of the best teams in Tier 1. I think he definitely can in the future, but not for right now. The biggest question, though, for me is, if Wrinkle does leave NIP, where does he go? Because I currently don't think there's definitely not a place for him. The only one I would actually have argued, and the jury's still out on Liquid and just sort of what they're doing over there, but that is the only one I would have maybe put a case forward and said, hey, you wanted an aggressive AWPER, Ultimate's doing well there, sure, but I would have definitely had Wrinkle on that shortlist.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, Ultimate's kind of well, I wouldn't say proven yet, but he's safe for now. I think there's no real question marks around him just yet. For now, I think there's a lot of people that are big fans of his, so let's just see how that goes. But yeah, where does Wrinkle go now that you say that? I'll have to ponder that one a little bit. I'm still a fangirl, and I'm still going to hype him up, but Bdog has now made me question a lot of things. Who else are we focusing on, though, when we take a look at the tier 2 lineups that are sitting in Pro League this time around?
You could go to Heroic, but again, that team's currently just kind of in a rut. Anyway, sorry.
My gosh, it's a mess.
European...
No, Heroic breaks my heart, to be honest. I don't want to talk about them because I'm sad.
NIP, though?
Do you know what my thing about Heroic is? I just think that they have the worst freaking luck. Like, I just feel like every time something ridiculous, like Cologne, it was visa issues.
Yeah.
Pro League, we snot out with the snap tap whatever drama.
Yeah,
Like
and that is not his
just
fault. That is not his fault.
they just can't catch a break. That's how I feel, and like I think it sucks. That's it. I actually like this heroic lineup. I think that I think it's a nice mix of players, and it sucks that no matter what happens, it feels like that they can't win. So maybe let's not just heap it on heroic today, because
Okay, that's fine.
feel bad for them, and I just want to give them all a hug. Let's talk about Fnatic.
Okay.
Because Fnatic is a fun one sometimes. They're like a curious mix of, I don't know, they're just kind of there, right? That's how I feel about Fnatic. They're just kind of there.
They are. Yeah, they're just there.
They're just there.
It's a
They're
shame
there at
because
Pro League,
like
right? So
they are. They are at Pro League. That's why we're talking about them on the Pro League episode. They're also at the RMR. They're also, I think, the only other event they go into is Res, because they didn't qualify for IEM Rio. I don't think they couldn't play Atlanta, because obviously ESL had that rule in where you kind of had to pick and choose one. So they went for Rio. They made it through to the closed qualies, and it just didn't happen. They were playing ThunderPick World Championship close qualifiers as well, and that format's brutal, but they lost to Ecstatic in a best of 3, and Ecstatic had got this young guy called Nut on their team, so that's not relevant. Sure, it's funny. Fnatic, it's a shame, because again, you've got these really good players. Like, you've got Body as an IGL who's got this experienced tenure, just playing at like the top of tier 2 and attending tier 1 events. And obviously he used to be in G2 like ages ago. You've got BlameF, who is still got the BlameF form, and he's on a 1.29 rating. I feel like that's kind of where he's just been sitting for the last 3 months, and that's when he joined Fnatic. So he's just absurd. Crims will never leave Fnatic. He's been there nearly 8 years.
I do love Crims.
Afro's a tricky one. Everyone likes to dogpile on Afro, and I don't think it's fair all the time. I think Afro does have an issue with consistency, but it's getting better. And I feel like people are looking at Afro from maybe like 6 months ago and just kind of going, oh, he was missing these really easy shots. And don't get me wrong, there are maps where Afro misses some really easy shots, but there's also maps that Afro would just drop like 25 kills. I'm just doing a whole overview on Fnatic now, because this...
I know, I quite am enjoying it though.
This team should be doing good. And if they're not doing good, at this point, is it a player problem or is it a coach problem? Because Kate has been there a while. Kate has been there through a lot of roster shuffles with Fnatic. Sure, Fnatic have also, it's fair to say, been through a lot of roster shuffles, but that was 9 months ago. They brought in QB, Body, MATYS. It was 3 months ago since they brought in BlameF. And we saw this team last year at Pro League, and I keep saying last season at Pro League, season 19, and this team was sick. This team was so good. Like, they made it to playoffs. Like, I was all in Fnatic. I was a big Fnatic fanboy. I will still have Fnatic close to my heart, because UK, they had Mezzy and they had Alex at one point. And I guess they got Keita now, but I don't know. I don't know. This team should be doing way better than it is with the players that they've got. And there's one guy we've not talked about yet deliberately, because I'll speak about him now, MATYS, who is unbelievable. And if you've got MATYS and BlameF on a team that can single-handedly drop like 30 kills each, like a map, why are you not winning best of 3s? How are we not setting up these players more? Because it's not an experience thing. You've got some of the most experienced minds in Counter-Strike on this team, in BlameF, in Crims, in Body. Why is this not working? It doesn't make sense.
Well, this is because MATYS as well. I think he was on HLTV's like rookies to watch, like ones that they were like this player's like, he's not in the conversation anymore. That was at the start of the year, right? Like he's not really in the conversation anymore. Why do you think? Like, why is it? Is it just because Fnatic is just not really?
Absolutely,
they're just there. Like we said, they're just there.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. Is the complete honest answer? I'm not sure. I don't think it's MATYS' fault. I think MATYS has been playing to the same level, if not maybe a little bit worse, since moving from Samp. But I remember in tier 2, and a little bit of history story time with me, is that I remember in tier 2 with Samp, it was like, this guy is the real deal. And I remember speaking to Beestick from Sinners, who's the IGL over there for them. They just made the RMR. And he was saying to me, like, a year and a half ago, he was like, I've been trying to sign MATYS for, like, a year, and I just can't because the buyout's too large. And all I want is MATYS to play on Sinners. Like, if we could get Sinners, like, to get him, that'd be amazing. But financially, it just won't work. Like, it doesn't make sense for the org. But he's saying, like, he's the best player to ever come out of that region. Like, period, ever. And he was like, he'll be on big things one day. He gets this move to Fnatic, and it's like, okay, like this, I'm excited. I've been on the MATYS sort of hype train for a while now. This is like towards the start of CS2, the back end of CSGO. The back end of CSGO, like you can go and look at it, like MATYS was dropping unbelievable ratings. Like it was actually scary how much that Samp team achieved when MATYS was there. And I'd say achieved online, they were winning a lot of best of threes as the underdog, and they were like getting through, like running deep in tournaments. I don't think they won CCTs, but they were like semi-final, grand finals, like quite consistently. Like this team was so good because MATYS was dropping like 30 kills every game. And MATYS still can drop 30 kills every game. I remember we worked on global finals, Sam, and we had Fnatic playing Anubis for the very first time. And BlameF dropped like 25 kills, but MATYS was right there with him on like 23. I can't remember who they were against, but I remember the game. And I was like looking at that and I was thinking, wow, if they can do this so consistently, you've got BlameF who is consistently putting up these ratings. You've got MATYS who is hungry, or so I thought. I think he is, to be fair to him. He needs to change his mouse pad, but I don't think he ever will. Like dropping like these 1.2 ratings like every game. How are you not winning best of threes? It really doesn't make sense to me. And I wish I could sit here and have answers as to why it is not looking good. But overall, Fnatic are so rough around the edges, and they just can't figure it out.
That CCT Global Finals, I remember now, like, that was the first time we got to see BlameF in that lineup. And there was that very game you're talking about where I was like, shit, people should be scared. Like, this looks really good. You've got the experience of body. You've got these, like, this insane, like, this is great. This is exciting. And then they were just there after that and nothing happened. It's like, they don't suck, but they're just not doing anything either. So it's not like you're looking at them going, wow, this is terrible. You're just kind of going, meh.
But surely, if they're not achieving anything, they're just standing there. They do suck. Like I
mean, fair point.
I don't know. Like I feel like they deserve criticism because this team was signed to go in a different direction, but ever since Fnatic has gone international, we've never seen success from it. And
it's just not working.
And I don't want to sit here and say maybe it's the org, because it probably isn't. I assume they're getting all the support that they would have, but I wonder how many boot camps they've been on. But then, if you're not qualifying to the events to get the boot camps, could you maybe just put them in a boot camp so they can qualify to the event? I don't know. And I don't know any of this, by the way. That's not me like publicly attacking Fnatic. This isn't me sort of calling them out. It's just me asking questions because I don't understand. Because this team on paper should be like consistently qualifying to events, and they're just not.
100%. And they're not. But I mean, there we go. We've now spoken about them, so maybe someone will have comments for us and can share some insights. If we go through all of Pro League, if you look at all your favorite tier 2 players, Bdog, let's make it really difficult. Is there one specific player right now that you can sell us for Pro League, or am I asking for the impossible?
I don't know. I don't think you're asking for the impossible. I'm just trying to get a team list on HRTV. It's not showing me them. Oh, there we go. Should I just pick one of these?
I need you to sell me a pro, so just pick your pro. Go insane.
You know what? Let's do it. Let's go Venomzera. I wanted to do an episode on him.
Boom. We will do an episode on him, I think.
Yeah, a deep dive. But for now, high level for Venomzera, sell me this pro. He's playing with some of the best teammates he will ever play with, I think, ever in his career. And he has been performing in a server that is sort of occupied by stars. He still manages to get some of the spotlight, and he's been given a lot of responsibility by this Red Canids team. And I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him, not only just in this roster, but also in Buketa. Is he the sort of player that you're going to see in maybe 6 months from now sort of move to a big team? I don't think so, because I think Red Canids will be that big team. I fully expect Red Canids to make the major as well through the RMR. I'll go ahead and I'll say that right now. I actually think, despite all this Fnatic conversation as well, that they actually might just make the major just to kind of do it in spite of us. But I think on paper they should be making the major. But yeah, Venomzera, he's got the Zera name. If you add the Zera to your name, it's a sign of respect. We should respect him.
Boom, just like that. He sold you that pro. I think we need to watch some more Pro League, Bdog. And considering we didn't plan this episode, I'm pretty sure it went pretty well. I learned a lot today, and I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well.
Yeah, I had a good time. It's always a great time. Thank you for letting me waffle pretty much every week.
I know, it's the easiest job in the world. I just sit back and you educate us all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please let us know in the comments. There's some of you that are regular watchers now. We really appreciate you. And let us know who you're keeping an eye on, because we'd like to hear from you.